Okay, so we have a couple of people joining us via Zoom tonight, and I'm just gonna have Lauren, who is our host online, give us a thumbs up verbally, please. We can't see you. Hopefully. We're not.
There you go. Is the mute button lit up on the bottom of that guy in the middle?
No.
We're good.
Okay.
Hey, Lauren, can you hear us? Yes, okay, cool, awesome. Well, we are gonna get started. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Welcome. My name is Jen Morgan with Riot. I'm the Virginia program lead. And I will be serving as your moderator for this evening. Maybe not. There we go. Awesome. Okay, for those of you who don't know, Riot is an economic development nonprofit that's focused on technology creating jobs in the technology sector. We take a very broad approach to the term technology, as a lot of businesses in the 21st century and jobs in the 21st century revolve around technology, including marketing, which we'll dive more into tonight. We also run an industry consortium of over 90 corporate tech partners who are all looking to grow and scale their businesses. And we run a startup accelerator and foundations program, both here in Virginia and in North Carolina and virtually. Before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsors who we couldn't do this work without them. So thank you very much to each and every one of them. And we will be updating this for 2023. So looking forward to onboarding some new sponsors this year. Our session today will consist of some individual chats with each of the panelists and a little bit of educational programming around how to use data to drive your business and growth. I thought I'd set the stage a little bit before we got into some Q&A with our panelists. To start, understanding your customer isn't necessarily as complex as you might think, but it does require some thoughtful analysis of where and how you can collect meaningful data. Every business is collecting data and information on their customers through how they engage on social media, on your website, and even collecting credit card information at point of sale. There are several different kinds of data that a business can collect, from personal data to engagement data, behavioral data, and attitudinal data. All of these are like main 4 categories around what types of data businesses are collecting. That can be personally identifiable data, how your consumers interact with your business, transactional details, and then general metrics on consumer satisfaction, purchase criteria, etc. And there are many ways on how to collect this data. I'm only going to highlight 3 here today. There are numerous ways to collect data on your businesses, and our experts here today can help you dive deeper into that. But to start, I think that the big elephant in the room is always we hear about Google Analytics and how that can tell you so much about your business. And for Google itself, Google Analytics can help organizations determine top sources of user traffic, gauge their success of their marketing activities and campaigns, track goal completions such as purchases, adding products to carts, discover patterns and trends in user engagement, and obtain other visitor information such as demographics. This service is a part of Google's marketing platform and is available free to anyone with a Google account. This is a really interesting free opportunity for a lot of businesses to start really understanding their data. I thought that I would just show everyone, this is Riot's Google Analytics account for our website. And this is looking at a 3-month period. You can change at the top, like what period of time you want to look at. So it can give you a lot of detail on what your business is doing over time. You're looking at how many people are on your website, how long do they stay, all of those sorts of things. For us, we like to dive into where are they coming from by country, and then also by city, as we look to grow and expand our business beyond our headquarters in North Carolina into different markets. We're trying to figure out, okay, are people actually engaging on our website from those markets? What does that look like over time? And then also looking at by operating system, are they coming from desktop and mobile primarily? What does that look like over time? Should we be making more mobile friendly content because that's how we're engaging the majority of our users, stuff like that. It gets very detailed and that's a lot of information that not everyone is going to understand. But it's a good first place to start and you can do a lot of Googling around it. And it's pretty easy to add it to your website to be able to start tracking this information. There's also social media analytics, which can help companies address experiences and spot trends in their market. If you're looking at a primarily nail business, we have one in the room tonight, you're going to be looking at hot topics and trends around nail art, or if you're looking at tech, what are the hot topics trending in technology that's going to be pertinent to your business. And then finally, for businesses that are point of sale based, credit card transactions can tell you a lot. It can tell you more demographics about your consumers. It can tell you zip codes and places that are happening. If you use the product Square, Square has its own analytics component to its website and to its service that can break down sales down to the items. So you can see what's trending, what's most popular for your business, and then also know when to stay open later. If there's like, a lot of rushing at the end of the day, maybe you need to extend your hours a little bit. Whoops, wrong way. There we go. So with all of that, finding and utilizing your data in your business that it's already collecting can ultimately help you grow and scale your business. So tonight we have two experts in finding this data and utilizing it to help grow your business. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves with your name and your title and organization, and then we'll get into some questions.
Hey everybody, my name's Dan. I own a company called Metro Nova Creative. We are a creative and branding agency located in downtown Fredericksburg. We work primarily with retail, small business, and government contracts. So we do a lot of branding and website tools. I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
Hi, I'm Chris Muldrow. I have a digital marketing and advertising company called Rambletype based in Fredericksburg. We work with small business. Our specialties, sort of a weird mix of specialties. We do e-commerce, we do economic development and tourism. We also do publications, so news and media publications. We work with some of those clients, and then other small businesses that we work with. And we do advertising, web development, digital marketing, that sort of thing.
Awesome, thank you. So my first question for you all is, what is one important area of customer data that businesses should look to gather? Why is it important, and where can we find it? We can break it down if we need to.
First,
I think if we got this thing out, this
Yeah,
might be a
this
little.
is a little less awkward.
So, I work with a lot of small businesses, and like I said, some of them are doing e-commerce, so they're selling product directly online. Others are more service oriented, so they're looking for leads and trying to get people on the door. One of the biggest pieces of information when I sit down with a new business, new client, that I want to try to understand is, I call it what rings the cash register. In other words, just trying to understand a little bit better which products they have that they already know are successful and that they're selling a lot of, and what sorts of areas are they seeing growth, where areas where they've seen decline. And you'd be surprised how many businesses I talk to and ask a question that can't really answer the question. But a lot of that data can be collected through your point of sale. If you've got credit card data or using a more sophisticated point of sale, you can track individual customers and how often they're doing business with you. And so knowing what's bringing that cash register, who are the customers who are return customers who are frequently coming in? What's your average transaction, either in store or online? What is the value, the lifetime value of a customer? Have you guys have heard the idea of a lifetime value of a customer? So somebody that you brought on, you've had them as a customer for 10 years. Over that 10 years, they average X number of dollars in a month, and they've made you Y number of dollars over a longer period of time. Because once you start gathering that information from the point of sale, from if you have a customer relationship management tool that you're using to track people, which a lot of larger businesses will use what's called a CRM, or customer relationship management, where they're putting notes in about, oh, you know, we talked to this guy on this time and we bought such, you know, such and such. The more you know what, you'll start seeing patterns emerge. And when those patterns emerge, you can then do more of the things that are working for your business and less of the things that you thought were working for your business. Because what I find is a lot of businesses are surprised once they start really sort of trying to put that stuff down, understand what is actually selling, what is sort of moving the needle in the business.
Yeah, we've had a few conversations tonight, prior to this, you know, we talked about, when you're trying to grow and expand your brand, understand, know what your products and services are, but be flexible to know that the market is going to dictate what those are for you. So you have to be, you know, have some fluidity in your ideas there. And just kind of as, you know, to bring up what Chris was saying, you know, understanding purchasing habits and patterns within your market is really important, not only so you understand where you should put your focus with your ROI as far as a certain product or service, but a lot of times businesses, whether they be retail or service-based industries, businesses can actually spend too much time even focusing on a customer that they've already got. So there's give love and attention and affection to the customers you have, but always remember that you should be marketing for the customers you want, not the ones you have already. So using that data and that analytics and those sales tracks, you can say like, hey, during Q2, we're really low on this. We shouldn't be. So now you can say in Q2, let's put a campaign for this product or service and see about this new demographic. So just kind of to cap on top of that as a way to plan out your marketing and stuff too. So.
Dan, can you elaborate a little bit on that ROI component and how you can track that?
Sure. So ROI is return on investment. And so the most simple kind of explanation of how to track that as far as data is if you have a website or if you have a product. So since we're kind of speaking about online retail, in most e-commerce systems on your website, you can create coupon codes. And so if you create a coupon code and you're going to do a social media campaign for this bottle of water, and I'm going to do one campaign for this bottle of water and one campaign for this bottle of water, both have a 20% coupon. One is 20 off and one is off 20. So you do your campaigns and then you can have a track that says how many people used that coupon code. And if it kept 20 was a higher usage than, you know, 20 off, then you know that this effort that went to this product, that marketing idea, whether it was that photo that you used in your post or that copy or whatever it is, you should A/B test. A/B test is do the same thing twice in different ways, so you know. And so as you do A/B test, you can see like, all right, I spent $500 on boosting this Facebook post, and this guy had the most uses. So now you've got your ROI. You tracked your sales comparative to the other one. So.
And that can be done as simply as a Facebook post.
Well, one thing that I'll add to that, whether you're selling product online or it's sort of your elite-based business. So elite-based is, when I say that, I'm talking about somebody that you need to communicate with, and ultimately they're going to come in, sign a contract with you, and pay you, not necessarily buying online. But one of the things that, from an ROI standpoint, that I like to see is if my marketing spend is here at what we call the top of the funnel, trying to get people in the door, I want to make sure that at the bottom of the funnel, when I get those folks in the door and they've actually spent money with my company, that the amount of money that they're spending here is more than what I paid to get them in the funnel up here. I worked for a company years ago that was spending a obscene amount of money on Google AdWords to drive traffic into their site. Let's call it $1 million a month. And they were making $999,999. on the traffic they were buying. That $999,000 looks great on the top line revenue standpoint, but at the end of the day, they were losing money because they weren't doing the math between here and here, and you gotta do that math.
You might know better, just being in the digital ad space, like what can you give us a good example? And I'm gonna lean on Chris here, just of a good, like, what's a good core ROI percentage? If I give $100 in, what's easy math like? Like, cause you hear everything, from a 5% return, a 10,
Well, that's the problem is it varies depending on what you're selling. So e-commerce is trickier because usually the ticket price is lower,
Yeah.
right? So e-commerce, you have to watch it a whole lot more carefully than you do a long-term relationship. Long-term relationship, if you you actually get a higher percent, from my experience, you get a higher percentage ROI on those longer term relationship types of deals where you're buying marketing, buying ads, that sort of thing, because the end dollars are higher. So you can spend more at the top end because you're going to make a whole lot more on the back end. When you're selling widgets or Santa Claus buttons, you have to make sure you're not spending too much to advertise the Santa Claus buttons at the top of the funnel, because you might not make it when you sell the buttons. I have a client who sells Santa Claus stuff and we joke about it. He's real busy right now.
Can I ask a question related to what Chris was talking about? I'm interested, when I think of like this top of funnel spend, I think of that as like qualifying leads. And then the sales team closes the lead. Like, do you have any thoughts about like how you measure the overall success? Is it because I'm qualifying better, or my sales process is closing better? Like, do you understand kind of what I'm asking?
I think I do. So, all along, you can kind of instrument that whole funnel. So you can know, let's say I spent $1,000 and I got 500 page views and I got 50 leads, and my sales reps got a successful phone call with 10 of those leads and they closed 3 of them. What you can start doing is instrumenting the whole way down the funnel and and what you're looking for, honestly, is you're looking for a weird drop off, right? You're looking for an anomaly, and it needs to look like a funnel. And if it looks like the funnel goes really wide and then suddenly it's like just choked to a point of death, that's probably where some of your problems are. That's a good question. I mean, once it gets in that salesperson's hand and they're trying to close, you really do need to be tracking. That's what a lot of companies use CRM software for, is to track sales percentages and that sort of thing, and see how well are we doing at closing these things once we get them in the door.
Can you all talk a little bit about how data and data tracking can help businesses improve their customer experiences?
That sounds like a cute man.
We got very diverse speakers.
So customer and user experience is a really instrumental part of developing a brand for a business. And so even using data and tracking customer information and understanding their user habits is going to be an important part of creating that user experience. And so, a big part of this is, before you can really get into this, I think a big step that a lot of businesses will skip is understanding who their target audience is. And we've spoken, you get to a point in your business where you can finally confidently say, that's not my customer. And I think it's an important step to have. And there's data is going to allow you guys to really do that. But as far as, a good user experience, we can kind of keep the flow with retail a little bit. But if on your website or e-commerce website, you can have tracking data like the leave in the cart, there's systems that can teach you like, hey, so-and-so added this to the cart, but they didn't get across the finish line. And so a really simplified kind of approach to that is, if they left something in the cart, and I'm sure we've all done this, right? And you're like, man, well, it was a $50 item. How do we retarget this person? Well, why don't we say, well, they liked this bottle of water, so an upsell option for $20 would be this cup. And let's give them a little bit more bait and say, if they get $75, we'll give you free shipping, right? So understanding where they dropped off in their sales process and knowing like what is going to be a value-based thing, whether it be retail or service, service-based industries, you can do the same thing, right? So what would be a valuable introduction to another product or service that, based on the data from that customer, I think is going to be beneficial and will get them across the finish line. So a really good example of that is we create these branding packages for a lot of startups. And as kind of a value add product that we have, we do printing, print production for a lot of our clients. We don't really do it advertised. You can't walk it off the street, we'll make you business cards, but if we design your suite of stuff, your, business cards and your suite of brand, marketing materials, we can get the stuff printed and drop shipped for you. And so we hold that item, that product system as a value add system to get those, when we get that data where someone's like, I'm not quite sure about this package. And I say, well, what if I throw a free set of business cards in there for you? So you're using the data you gathered from that information, found out what their pain point was, figured out what the hang up is, and give them an opportunity to get across the, and know that like, this is my throwaway product. It doesn't cost me anything, have those throwaway products so that you can give, give valuable information or valuable products to your customers to kind of get through that funnel.
I'm curious, I'm gonna ask you a question. So we both get clients who do, and we do website redesigns. By the way, we have two separate companies, but we're buddies and we work with each other. And
We drove together.
Yeah, we drove together. Real competitive. So when you go in and do a redesign, one of the things we try to do, we hope somebody's got Google Analytics already because we can go see what people are already doing on the site. And I know one of the things that we do, I'm curious how you guys approach this. One of the things we like to do is we like to figure out like, what are people doing on the site? And then we ask the question, if the client's aware, like, hey, did you know people are doing a lot of this? Is that something you want them to do? And the answer is usually yes, because it's some function of the site that's there that people really need. Germana going and registering classes, people are going to that site, that's something they're going to do. You want them to do it. You want to make it easy for them to do that. You have a doctor and you want people to go to the patient portal because it keeps multiple phones. So if they're using the patient portal a lot, we make sure when we're doing the design that patient portal is very visible and easy to get to and has a bright red button or whatever it is to get to that. But then we also have the conversation like, what do you want people to do that they are not necessarily doing now? And so do you guys have that same kind of conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do our proposal process for a website. It'll be say, give us your wish list, which is what do you want this website to do? And then we say, let's take a look at, if you've got a website already, let's take a look at, what customers, what features are important, what are they using? But then same kind of thing is, we build, and here's a very good example. Everybody gets a website and on your homepage, the image that's at the top of the page, right below the menu, the hero image is what it's called. Everyone says, I want a really important call to action right there. And I want a slider. I want these images to slide. And I tell every one of them, no, you don't. And they say, but it has all my services. And I said, no one's going to look at it. 75% of your market's on their phone. They're not going to stare at their phone and wait for your slides. And market behavior dictates that they're going to, even if they're on the desktop, it's going to load. They're going to look at the top menu. They're going to gaze past the call to action hero image area and try to find some, we call it some meat and potatoes. So some valuable information. So we typically tend to use that hero image as more of just an attractive asset that creates a good user experience, but knowing that the real important call to action area is going to be right below that. But that's just from, data tracking and kind of understanding. So that's, we have kind of similar.
We do the same thing with drop-down menus where people have like 3 layers of drop-down menus on the site. And I tell them, so just tell me, if you're driving down the highway and there's a sign that says stores, and you have to pull over on the side of the highway and flip the sign down to figure out what stores are there, how effective is that for you? And usually that gets our menus cut down to a manageable size.
Chris, I want to follow up on something you said about with the Google Analytics checking, okay, did everyone go to the registration page if that's the main goal of the website? how often should companies be checking after they do a rebrand or after they put that main thing on their website to see if it's actually working? Like, what's the follow through on that? How did they find that information?
Well, my most successful customers are looking at that data every day. Particularly if they're short turnaround sort of product, so retail, e-commerce, small contract lead stuff, that kind of thing. They're in there every day. And some of those guys, Santa, I'm in Santa, I'm in Santa's site like 5 times a day right now. And I'm in there trying to figure out like what's moving, what can we promote on social next? What are people buying? Is it changing as the season goes? This is a really interesting time for me because I do a lot of commerce and it's Christmas time. And so I don't think we have a ton of retail people in here, but this time is crazy for those guys. I have businesses that will make more in November and December than they made the whole rest of the year online. And I mean, I'm talking like 5, 6, 7 times more. And the trick is they have to be looking at what people are buying. Are they buying the gift baskets that your staff is spending so much time doing in the back? Are they buying individual items, not buying the baskets? Why are you selling them in the first place? It's way more labor and you could be selling bottles of wine individually, that kind of thing. And so the more they're in there to understand what's happening, the more they can adjust what they're doing to sort of, interact and get to where they need to be.
It's unique to, obviously, the retail quick buy versus a service company, right? The reason they're looking at data is not different, right? They just happen. I know one of these guys does our website, I look at it, I go, oh, okay, I just saw something. So, I mean, talk a little bit about that difference, right? I mean, you want people to do something different in the service industry. Or their time on your website is different than say, I'm going to buy a product. Right?
So that's actually a kind of perfect segue. So I was going to bring in, we did a website build for primarily residential security systems. So they have commercial side, but their bread and butter is residential security. And the original website they had was there was stuff flying everywhere and things were animating in and it was very fancy. And understanding analytics and really what we look at in situations like that is your exit time, right? Like your bounce rate. How many times are people going to show up on the homepage? Are they spending 30 seconds? That means they're kind of looking around the reading. Are they clicking or are they going 2 seconds and out? If they're 2 seconds and out, they're having a bad time. And so in a service-based industry for this particular client, I said, imagine you came home from work. And of course, what's the most time that they get their calls is like 7, 8, 9 p.m. So I said, imagine you're exhausted, you come home from work, you get inside, you get your kids down, you're gonna get dinner started, you go to the back door to let the dog out, and the door is unlocked, but you locked it and it's got a cracked window. You're now panicking. Is there somebody in the house? You're calling police, you're doing all these things, the police are on their way, you're trying to figure out if anything's stolen. Do you want this website to just be flashing at you and going crazy, or do you want a calming website with a nice crisp white background that's got clear emergency red button call? Like, those are the systems that you can kind of keep in place and understand, like, what are your peak hour times? If it's 6, 7, 8 o'clock, that's good. People are coming home and they realize their house just got broken into. So create a good user experience because it will make their decision to hire you that much smoother. They're already stressed out and anxious and have a million things going through their head. Make this an easy decision. And so that's kind of how you can kind of build and understand user habits on the service side of things. It's empathy,
And John, what John does is interesting. I'm just gonna leave it.
but nobody can know what it is. And it's
Economic development and tourism. What you guys do is much more like my media clients than it is like a lead-based business. And there are a few reasons for that, and these guys can tell you way better than I can. The path to getting a announcement in a community for a new development, new business, that sort of thing, that's a very long trail to walk. That's not something that happens overnight. But one of the things that these guys have to do is they have to communicate to people both in the community and outside the community about the community and talk about why this place has value and why people might want to build their business here and grow their business here and that sort of thing. And so it's interesting, some of the conversations that we have had, and I think that it's interesting, because conversations I've had with John's team have sort of gone out to other clients that I have, and it's this idea that we've gotten so wrapped up in analytics on our sites, but we're doing a lot of messaging in other places. And so one of the things, like when you're doing economic development, tourism, or you're a media company or whatever, or doing information security, essentially, let's say that you want to start messaging people about what you guys do. Okay, you're certainly going to do that on your website, but you want people to learn about what you do in other places too, because it takes a lot of work to get them to your website. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of money to get them to your website. So as you're doing marketing, whether that's print ads or native advertising or banner advertising or Google AdWords or anything you go out there, we're really talking to our clients now about this idea that every bit of messaging that you get in front of someone needs to have substance to it. It needs to have meat on its bones, because they might not want to click to go to their website because they're doing something else. And so the more we can get messaging in front of them, so we're doing things like native advertising and video. Video is a good way to get more meat on the bones of this messaging than the old school banner ad that's got, one little picture and it does that sort of thing, because we feel like people online, they're doing lots of stuff, and you kind of need to get messaging in front of them and not totally disrupt the flow of what they're doing. And so the analytics stuff is really important to us, but we also really care, like if we run a native advertisement, like text ads that you can run that you see on other people's websites, well, we want to know how many people read that article on someone else's website. We want to know how many people completed viewing video. If it's a 30-second video, we want to know, did they do all 30 seconds of the video? That's valuable information for us to know, because that means that we got the message in front of one more person or two more people or three more people or that sort of thing. And so we're having to sort of, in my mind, we've really sort of expanded the way we've talked. We're looking at, well, what is it? Have we reached someone with our messaging? It's much more important now to me, the impressions that those things have, as opposed to just the clicks that they got to go to the website.
And all of that is data and information that's ultimately like
Yeah.
helping that business grow and scale in some sort of way.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess the question I would have is, you have this web data, you have customer discovery data that heck maybe on a spreadsheet or something like that, or in a CRM if you're doing that right. All of these disparate data sets, and what would your recommendation be to businesses, or if it is even valuable to aggregate those data sets? Do you find there's particular data sets that people get high value out of aggregating that may be offsite or something like that?
And so.
And so the question is actually, you're saying, is there a way, run it by me more time, but it's essentially, is there a way, like, once you've aggregated all this data, whether it be a website, a form, like, what's,
Or should you in the first place? And it's, if a business should aggregate these data sets, what's most important, right? Is it your web and point of sale data to kind of put those into a single place to look at it, or is it people who walk through the door and identifying foot traffic and online advertising?
I think I think it makes a lot of sense to aggregate. And see, now I'm doing it. I think it makes sense to aggregate at the level that there's enough identifiable, actionable information. So if I have point of sale data that has names, and I have online retail data that has names, I want to aggregate that because I want to know that John bought 3 things from me online and then came in the store and bought something from me. And I can identify who that person is. And I can then take action and communicate directly to that person because I've aggregated the data there. So if you're running a CRM, let's say that you, let's say that you are running a CRM, you've reached out to people, and then you go to an event and you see the people in the event, and you're gathering some data there. If there's some way to merge, like, hey, I've got an email list from this event that we sponsored. And I know I've already got emails in my CRM that you may or may not have. And I want to make sure that I merge those together, and then I can look at it and I want to tag it, right? I want to know that, okay, we've got a tag that says this email came from X event, and I've got a tag that says this person also came and signed up for my newsletter. And that way you begin to get a pattern of interest that you can see how valuable those people are. I had a client one time who did a contest, and they were just trying to collect email addresses. And they sell magazine, it's a magazine, like an adventure magazine, and they got this huge email list of email addresses. And they pulled all that stuff into MailChimp, which they were using for their email, and they started sending stuff out. And what they found was that email, that contest that they did, resulted in such a small amount of new subscriptions versus what they were doing with other things, that they had wasted a ton of money paying to do this contest. And so they wouldn't have known that if they hadn't merged some data sets together into one place and realized, oh yeah, that the contest stuff that we got didn't actually result in any end sales at the end of the day. But the problem is the high level, the top of the funnel stuff, most of that's not tied to directly identifiable people. And so the question is, well, how do I aggregate it? It's kind of hard to know. It's not, we say funnel as if it's like water flowing down a pipe. It's really more like the Grand Canyon, the layers of the rock in the Grand Canyon, and you go down a layer and it all looks the same, and you go down another layer and it all looks the same. And ultimately you get down to the bottom of the canyon, it's all tight, and you can kind of see everything around you. And that's where you've got that personal data, the names, the people you talk to, the people you communicate with.
Yeah, and essentially that was the kind of the point I was going to make too, is and that's what we talked about, understanding who your target audience is. And so you can weed out the data that's irrelevant to you. And so having a CRM is a great way to do that, because you can tag leads. So lead tracking is always a really substantial way to do that. Because then you can create a Venn diagram, right? And so, okay, what are the shared pie pieces? And those are the pieces that we can kind of get hyper focused on. And so kind of a real life example, I did a campaign where if anybody's familiar with FAR, Fredericksburg Area Association of Realtors, they approached me and said, we've got our FAR Expo coming up. We would love for you to be a vendor at the thing. And, here's how much it costs. And, the booth was like $200. And then I could do something else for this amount of money. But one of the things that I could do was, I think I spent like $500 for an ad in the magazine. So I ran an ad in the magazine and had a QR code on the magazine that said, if you're interested in starting your real estate branding package, scan this QR code, and it went to a landing page specific to that source. And then just on my desk, I had a little plaque that said, scan this QR code to win $200. And they were like, what? I said, yeah, like, I don't need you to put your business card in my thing because I don't want to type in on your information. Like, scan this QR code and you're going to enter in, and you get a chance to win $200 Visa gift card. So you don't have to hire us, but you can win. So how many of these do you think I got from my M Magazine ad for $500? How many leads did I get from my silly little thing on the front of the desk where I was interacting with people and they were seeing my brand and all the fun that we do and talking to people? 55 people sign up for that scam.
There was no Visa code.
There was, yeah. there was, and one really one who didn't hire us, but that's okay, because we actually got 2 clients that equated to, I mean, it was like $3,000 in revenue generated on a $200 investment. So those are ways that you can track that data and kind of cross-reference it and see. If you guys are using QuickBooks also, there's a tagging system in QuickBooks. If you guys are familiar, you can actually go into invoices or estimates and have a tag memo line. And so that's how we'll do, like, how did you hear about us? Oh, Facebook. So then you can aggregate all that information and look at a quarterly review of where your leads and your actual money in leads are coming in. So those are ways that you should be able to track this. So I hope that answers your question.
Just.
Mark had a question.
Oh, yeah, Mark. Sorry.
Sorry, Mike.
Actually, you answered my question, but this, how would you suggest you go out and do QR codes? What data are you able to collect with QR codes? I know it's quite substantial.
So there's a million different ways. So you can have just a QR code that just goes to a standard website or landing page. In this instance, we built a Gravity form. Gravity form is just a contact form, but it's a system that you can use in WordPress. So we built the Gravity form, and that information, when they entered it, hit submit, it automatically signed them up to a MailChimp category list that I put together specific for Expo. So now I've got these 55 whatever realtors that were actually interested in something. I mean, it was $200 gift card, but as far as I'm concerned, they're my customers now, right? So the QR code went to this landing page. They filled out the information. Their first name, last name, email, phone number were put into the MailChimp category for that campaign specifically. But we've done other systems. So we did a campaign for the city of Fredericksburg. We actually got, our shop got, we won the tech grant, which has never happened in the city of Fredericksburg, a Main Street organization. So we went through Main Street. Fredericksburg's never won in the history of the Main Street tech pitch contest, and technology has actually never won in the history of the pitch contest nationally. So we won for both. And what we did is the Scan and Love campaign. So what we did is we went downtown to the business owners, shot video of the business owners standing out front, because the number one thing they said, people are walking around with COVID, but they're not coming into the stores because they're still uncomfortable. So how do we create an emotional connection outside of the store? Scan this thing, video pops up. You get a video of that business owner explaining like why they love being downtown, and some B-roll footage of the inside, so they can shop safely from outside from a comfort point. And then what we did was, on each person, if they were a restaurant, you had a button at the end of the video, and it just ran through YouTube that said order online. Pick up their order. They can order food from the curb outside and have it brought out. Or if it was a retail business, we had a button that said shop online. Same thing. I'm gonna shop online. Hey, that was me. I just did it. They'll bag it up. We'll set it outside. So, and with that data, the QR code, you were able to track the scans, compare it to YouTube. So, are people just randomly finding this, or are they scanning it? And I think it was like a 90% scan on. And then, based on the time periods that Main Street was able to provide to the business owners, and I think we did like 50 shops. It was pretty big. They were able to say like, yeah, like the 2 weeks after we stuck those things on our windows, this was our sales. So that's kind of an interesting way, 2 different interesting ways to kind of utilize that technology.
Question around, if you are a business owner who is just trying to get into understanding their data, where are some simple ways that they can start? Your business is aside for now, but just like off that.
There's a lot of data out there, particularly about Google Analytics, that walks you through it. The one thing I would say, if you're going to do that, if you're sort of going to Google for data, is check the date on the article, and you want something that's recent. Why do I say that? Well, Google's engineers rework their algorithm on a regular basis. They have lots of reasons and motivations for doing it, but that will change pretty significantly. And so you want to make sure that you're getting fairly up-to-date information, because you might be reading an article on something that isn't in the tool anymore. And so you want to make sure you're going to check that. You may be aware, by the way, that Google is changing the GA4, which is their new reporting system, and they will stop reporting in an old Google Analytics account as of June, I think it is this year, or next year, July 23. So that's where most of the people I know who go and get data, that's where they start, is they go and they go online, they Google for it. There are some like groups of people who talk about this stuff. But I will be honest, there's a lot of arcane data out there. It's sort of hard. I mean, I'll be blunt. part of the problem is the people who are writing about this are people like us who are also selling services for this stuff. And so the problem is you find these articles and the conclusion of the article is call me and I'll tell you more. And so I found most of the data that I need when I'm trying to figure out, particularly when something new is coming in Google, I try to get as close to the source as I can. So Google's got a lot of like help articles and that sort of thing. You can actually go and get certified as a Google Analytics expert through Google. It's free to do, and you can go get certified, and it tells you all the ins and outs of doing this stuff. It's non-trivial to do, but it is something that we can do to find that out. Back in the day, we would say get a book, but nobody writes books about this thing anymore.
There's still Google Analytics for dummies.
But the problem is, by the time they printed that book, they've changed the algorithm 3 times and changed the interface 4 times. John's probably seen me do this before. I'll go into a meeting with clients sometime and I'm like, oh yeah, we're doing our monthly analytics meeting. And I go and open the page. I'm like, where did that come from? I've never seen that link before in my life. I have no idea what that means. I'm gonna have to figure that out because they're constantly adding things. How did you go to for information like that? That's not a great answer, I don't think. I feel like it's not very helpful.
So, I mean, the short answer is there isn't one. I mean, so the best you can do, so when Chris was talking about making sure that you're looking at the most frequent information. So if you do a Google search, if you're familiar, right below the search bar, there's a few buttons and there's like a thing called tools, and you can sort, show me the latest, like the most recent article. Because again, like there's been times where I'm like, I cannot figure out why this code thingy is not working. And I'll do a Google search, like, why is this, like, I actually had one today, I called George, our friend does IT. So, and I looked up, I'm like, what the heck does this mean? And I see the first article, I'm like, oh, cool, answered it. And I'm like, oh, from 2017, why is that #1 on Google? Well, it's #1 on Google because they did their SEO really well. And so you have to, I think people tend to forget that Google is a business. And so their business model is to provide you a good experience. And so if it's a really, really good looking website that's really, really, really big and really, really, really trusted, they're going to show that to you. Because if they show you a really crappy website that looks terrible and doesn't load for 5 minutes, you're going to have a bad experience and Bing something instead of Googling something. So Google's job is to make sure that you're not Binging anything. And so you have to, as a consumer, remember that as well. When you're looking up data, when you're looking up stuff on Google, make sure that you're checking sources and you're looking at dates. And if it's a web development company or a Google Analytics company telling you about Google Analytics, remember that. So yeah, but YouTube's always great. Or honestly, find somebody in IT. They probably can walk you through most.
Yeah, and in analytics, there are little question marks scattered all through Google's tools, and Facebook is the same way. There are little question marks scattered everywhere. You mouse over them and they'll give you an explanation of what that particular thing is. And that sounds like a minor thing, but it's really, really helpful to go and look at it. And then because that will give you a jumping off point to go, oh, okay, what do they mean by page views? Well, you go and you look at the definition of page view, and then when you read the explanation, go, okay, I want to learn a little more about this phrase that's in this explanation. You go look through that, and then suddenly you're on the right path to finding out more data, how to do this. But that's where I usually, yeah, I mean,
You can learn so much
Yeah.
in your, but there's, more information can be found. You dig deeper and ask questions.
yeah, the mouse over is
Like, we
magic.
don't track age or any kind of demographic, which, pro con, there's all that, but, and same thing with like your social media, with Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, you can, at the back end from your account page, look into all that information.
Who do you follow as a marketing influencer? If you like, you're really inspired by, you'd like to go into their up-to-date content.
Chris.
Another,
Dan,
know your competition.
Dan does some of the best branding in the market. And stuff. The brands have character, they have power to them. It's funny because I see stuff and I pretty much know when it's you now. And so he's definitely somebody that I follow. I come from the newspaper world originally, and I still follow some of the folks who stayed in that world. And but not a lot of them. I'm getting old, and I've been doing this for a long time, longer than I like to think of. And so I do find that I occasionally will send a note to somebody that I know, particularly folks who were sort of been in the business for a long time, and we'll talk through. Like, my conversations now are like, okay, did you see this new thing that's coming out? What do you think? And then usually when I ask a question, there'll be some feedback on, yeah. I mean, there's somebody that you know that like Greg is somebody that I've bounced idea. I have a friend in Portland that I do some work with that we'll sit down and just have conversations like, oh, there's a big conversation going on in this world, in this data world right now. It's probably worth talking about that. Apple changed their iOS policy on personal information that they can store, that you could store, and it's pretty significantly affecting the way that people are able to get tracking data and advertising data. And we're seeing that more and more. So our ability to target stuff to people is tightening up quite a bit. And the whole sort of advertising ecosystem is changing because of security and privacy issues and how that's affecting how you can market things. And so a lot of the conversations that I'm having right now are what's the plan as we are not able to do the kind of targeting we were before, or maybe we have to go about it a different way. And so usually I'm looking for like announcements from people like, oh, Apple said they're going to do this. I like to deep dive into that to figure out what's going on there. To see if I can get an understanding of what the implications are going to be long term. You might see a story that says Apple has increased their privacy on iPhones, but I'm going and trying to figure out what does that really mean? Does that mean I'm not going to be able to do geo-targeting anymore because there's not geo data that's being attached? Or if I am, do I have to go through somebody else to do it? So, yeah.
So I think there's actually a really good opportunity, especially something that's not really discussed often is internal branding. Internal branding, for those, branding in general is emotional connection with product or service, right? So external branding is how your customers interact with your business. Internal branding is something that's often forgotten, and that is how your employees interact with your business. It's just as important, and something that's really interesting that I've seen the market shift happen, a decade plus back. I told government contractors, you should really hire me to make like a really cool logo for you guys and like do your website. And government doesn't care what we look like. They just need to see a number, slap a call data on it, call today, we're moving on. And so that's fine, but eventually, as new generations of employees and staffers come out, they're going to care less about a number and care more about experience and work-life balance and all these things. And if you don't look like a great, cool company that has a good work-life balance, they ain't coming. And if they ain't coming, you're not winning contracts. So guess what happened in the last 5 years? Government contractors going, okay, yeah, we need a logo, no more bald eagles. So I think an important part of developing a business is less about following influencers and content creators that are going to teach you how, and more about following the content creators and influencers that are teach you why. So that I think is going to give you more value in your business based on longevity of keeping staff than listening to guys like us talk about analytics on TikTok. Nobody wants to go to TikTok to listen to analytics. That's just the truth. You want to go to TikTok to watch cat videos or whatever, but you gotta, okay, one person, she's the one for analytics on TikTok, but I think there's a lot of benefit if you're looking for those quote unquote guys on content marketing guys. Everybody probably knows Gary Vee. 70% of the market is just regurgitating what he's been saying for 12 years. Go to the source. Simon Sinek is always going to be a really great one. So if anybody is not familiar with Simon Sinek, it's a really great thought leader in business and marketing and strategy. He's written some amazing books. Leaders Eat Last is a really good one. So Marine Corps mentality of your leader is at the end of the line. So some of those guys and gals, Paula shares an amazing design studio. She's a creator of Citibank logo. She runs an amazing design firm in New York, and they have a lot of great insight and value on how to build internal brand of a business Because if your business is floating well, everything else will fall in place. I always say, like, if I don't take care of my staff, I don't get to play this game anymore. And so that's an important part. So I think it was important to say.
Thank you. Well, to be respectful of everyone's time, are there any other questions from the audience?
I just had one, and you kind of alluded to it, Chris, regarding, the new privacy, requirements, and, obviously Apple kind of at the forefront from from a product standpoint, but, if you look at the laws that are being passed in California right now, and the expectation in that industry is that, over the next few years, a lot of that's gonna trickle down, across the country and, into every, whether it's state legislation or possibly federal legislation. Is there, this is your industry and, you guys obviously have your kind of finger on the pulse. Like, what's the industry discussions going on? Like, what is that gonna change? Because I mean, if California and what's going on there does hurt a lot of this data that you're collecting, you're not going to be able to anymore. So what's kind of, and it's always a cat and mouse game, right? So
Right,
what's-
so that's a great question, and we're already starting to see. When I have clients of a certain size who do national business, I'm already talking to them about doing the compliance messaging that you see on a lot of the live sites now, accept cookie usage. That started in the EU, and then California followed EU, and other states are talking about it. It will be ubiquitous probably eventually. But here's what we think is happening. The real push right now is this idea of what they call third party cookies. So the idea that I can put, you all probably heard the term cookies before, and I've got a really long boring explanation of how cookies get put on your browser. If you want to sleep later tonight, I can explain it before we leave. People are me like, don't do that. But third party cookies are this idea that you can go to my website. I can put a cookie on your machine that can then be read by lots of other people, and basically it's how I track someone's behavior. So it's how I see whether you're shopping for a car, or I see you're shopping for a home, or that sort of thing. And so third-party cookies exist in a lot of banner advertising stuff you see across the web. Most people that I know think those are going to be gone within 2 or 3 years, that you won't be able to use them anymore, because either the browser companies or the Apples of the world are going to eliminate your ability to do that. But what doesn't ever seem to be at risk is the idea that if you have a relationship with a certain site, that site can gather information from you. So the idea of a first party cookie is something that, by all intents and purposes, we think is going to continue to exist. And so what we're starting to see rumblings of is networks of sites that are allying, essentially gathering first party cookie data, and then on the back end sort of trying to take that data and use it to continue to do some of the more targeted sorts of advertising that people are doing now. It's interesting for me. It's really interesting for me because, like I said, I've been doing this a long time. And back in the day, this whole idea of targeting people didn't exist. I worked at the Freelance Star for several years, many moons ago, and we actually created an ad platform there. We called them stalker ads. And they were designed to do what we just sort of accept ads are doing now. So you went to the car site on freelancestar.com, and we made the assumption that you might be shopping for a car. We would deliver you car advertisements when you read on the rest of the site. That was all first party data that we were collecting. But back in the day, like if you needed to get local, how did you do it? You bought local radio, you bought local TV, you bought local newspaper, because those were, you could make the assumption that those were going to local people. And so I think what we're going to see is an interesting shift where if you're trying to get your message out to people, you're going to be looking for publications that they're interested in. You're going to be looking for sites that are local to them, that might have local news and information. You're going to be looking for those kinds of sites. So instead of being able to buy in a network that you get across thousands of sites, it's going to be more work for you as a marketer to get where you need to be. And you're going to have to use a little more assumption oh, well, this is a local website, so I'm gonna assume there are local people who are going there and getting information. I don't know if that's the case, but that's where I think we're gonna see things going. That's great, thank you.
Well, to wrap up, will you all very briefly summarize what somebody could come to you for, and they'll be around for more questions afterwards if there's specifics, but.
And I guess you do stuff that I don't see. Our sweet spot in the market, I think you'd agree with me here. For local businesses, we tend to be the e-commerce shop that most people go to. We're pretty good at that. So if you're trying to sell a product online, we're pretty good at that. If you have stuff that you need your site to do that maybe is going to require a lot of customization or like special data sets, we build a lot of business directories and a lot of like unique data into someone's site that people can then go and search for. So I was telling some folks earlier, we're doing a big project in Southwest Virginia with Virginia Tech and my brother's company right now about agribusiness and gathering data about agribusiness where you go and map it and track it and that sort of thing. That's kind of our sweet spot in the market, but we also are one of the bigger players doing digital advertising. So Google AdWords, native advertising, video advertising. If you don't really know how to buy that stuff or how to target that stuff, we're probably one of the better shops in the area doing that stuff. That's what we think of this.
Yeah, in our side of the things, we really focus on visual identity and web development and user experience. So, a good example is City of Fredericksburg hired us, so we're their tourism department. We do, graphic projects and branding projects and stuff. We also work with small business retail startups. We actually have small packages built for small businesses that are kind of within their budget. So we kind of have those two avenues of services, the small retail and then the government contract, stable size stuff. And as far as how we function together, being within a couple blocks of each other, a perfect example, we launched a website with Fraser, and so, the simplified version of is we make the car look good and he makes the car run fast. So that's kind of the easier package, I think, but yeah.
Well, thank you both so very, very much. Just a couple of quick things. If you are thinking of starting a business, want to learn more about Riot, how to get connected to entrepreneurs and other companies across the region, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm based here at the test bed. Also in the room is Tom Snyder, our executive director. He's also happy to answer any questions. Our next event is our pitch night with our startup companies on January 26th. The location is to be determined, but we're hoping it's a cool venue. And so we'd love to have you come out and support our companies as they pitch. And then also we are running our foundations program for new and idea stage companies in February. And we have an alum in the room who's also happy to answer any questions. So yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thank you guys.